there's a lot of buzz in the marketplace when it comes to artificial intelligence. And of course, there's also some weird things going on out there when it comes to AI, and it has caught the interest and imagination of a lot of people. I don't know if you're familiar with this. This is the first AI church incorporated in, yes, Silicon Valley, by a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. But it shows that the times are really sort of focusing on AI, and everybody has a view on it, as does Ray Kurzweil. Are you all familiar with this guy? Some of you? This is the guy who is now the head of engineering at Google, and he's an interesting guy. He has sort of predicted that the date for when the AI is more accomplished in some regards than humans will happen within our lifetime. So he talks about the singularity, and it's all happening. And you can sort of dismiss that maybe, but the guy is surprisingly good at nailing some of these technological breakthroughs, and he has a track record of predictions that are quite impressive. So when you put this together, you can sort of see why Gartner is putting AI on top of the hype cycle, because AI is hyped, certainly. And there used to be sort of the AI detractors saying, oh, there are certain limits to what artificial intelligence can do, and there will be, a brick wall coming up soon that will sort of be impossible to overcome. But those voices are becoming more and more silent now. So I think there is this sense of the open-ended future. The horizon is vast and it's exciting. But there has been these times where we have been disappointed. So we've talked about these AI winters that have followed the non-successful realization of what has been promised in the hype. But I think we are sort of moving up this slope now, and I think AI is becoming very productive. So I'm going to touch about some of the things that the Watson does when it comes to actually providing real productivity gains and value increases. So IBM has then defined the era that we live in as the cognitive era, and I think that's valid. I think that's a good way of framing it. I think it does give us a nice context in which to operate. And this is also in line with what IBM has done for a number of years, namely posing ourselves grand challenges. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept. I know that Google has sort of hijacked it, and they talk about the moonshots. But IBM has posed ourselves these grand challenges. And one grand challenge was posed in the late 60s when the Americans wanted to put a man on the moon. And that had never been done before. So they called IBM and they say, hey, we have an idea, we're going to put a man on the moon. Can you help us out? And IBM said, yes, that sounds like a grand challenge for us. And a lot of interesting technological breakthroughs came out of that. Then you may be familiar with another grand challenge, which was what was mentioned earlier, maybe, the chess-playing computer, the Deep Blue, where we figured out a way to beat Kasparov. And that was a big surprise for a lot of people back then. Now we think, well, of course, chess computers, old hat. But what Google is doing with AlphaGo, as you mentioned earlier, I think is in line with this approach of putting ourselves a really tough challenge to see if we can figure it out and how quickly we can figure it out, and then take the learnings from that great challenge and that success and put it into sort of commercial applicability. So what Google now is doing is not only impressive in the sense that when they did the first version of AlphaGo, they had an expertise-trained approach to it, which they then left behind, and they moved into this AlphaGo Zero, where they did away with the expertise, they did away with the experience, and then said, hey, can we train this thing without experts? Namely, can we put the algorithm above the requirement for data? And they were successful, right? They were very successful. And now they're taking on StarCraft, which is, of course, a completely different nature. But it's sort of in line with this approach of figuring out how to do really interesting things by tackling really tough problems. And beginning 2000, IBM asked ourselves this question: can a system be designed that applies advanced data management and analytics to natural language in order to uncover a single, reliable insight in a fraction of a second? That to us seemed like a pretty grand challenge to pose ourselves. And as you know, hopefully this will play. It was quite successful.
Watson. Who is Franz Liszt? You are right. What is violin? Good. Who is the church lady? Yes. Watson. What is narcolepsy? You are right. And with that, you move to 36,600. $681.
So the scientists were pretty happy. That was quite amazing. That was in 2011. And all that technology, all that scientific breakthrough that was required to get in place then is now a small part of AI services under the brand name Watson that we are taking to market. So what has happened in the marketplace, as you probably know, is that a lot of the technology available today is being servitized, is being stood up as services that you can leverage. You don't need to acquire a large license for a large software suite. You can sort of call a service and make use of it. And basically everything that Watson required to beat Jeopardy is now part of this natural language understanding services available through IBM. But that was 2011, right? So a lot of things have happened. And what Watson has done now is broaden out into this knowledge domain, where we talk a lot about discovery services. And that is all about figuring out how to populate these impressive algorithms with large sets of data that may not normally be possible to leverage for various modeling purposes. We're also spreading out into the translation domain, and I'm sure you've seen some of these amazing translation services that are coming, not just from IBM, but from all over the place, where you have real-time translations of languages doing quite well, actually. Of course, the speech-to-text, text-to-speech conversion systems is very interesting. I mean, just freeing up the hands, doing away with the keyboard. That helps me anyway, because I only have 2 fingers in front of the keyboard. So I'm happy if I can talk to my information system. Also, these have become more solid now. So I mean, not only Watson and the conversation services, but Siri and Alexa and all of these companies and organizations are putting out these conversation services, and it's really taking off. With a more complex understanding of language comes the possibility of empathy, or of understanding. Now, this is not to say that these AI algorithms are sentient and have feelings, but it means that they are able to understand us, and by understanding us better, provide a better service. So we're moving into these personality insights, these tone analyzers, where you can parse language and you can understand really, really fine-grained details about your customers. And of course, the whole visual recognition suite of services are coming along as well, right? And these are all offered on the cloud. And I think this is a general, this is not unique to IBM. There are a lot of other great companies out there that do precisely this, right? They broaden out the artificial intelligence toolbox, they make it available as services, and they offer it through a cloud platform. But anyway, this sets up the kinds of use cases that Watson can deal with now. And we like to think of what Watson is up to in the sense of a partnership between man and machine, because we do want to stay away from this antagonistic takeout play where you talk about lights out factories where there are no workers and everybody's unemployed, or on the universal basic income plan or something like that. That is not what we are up to. We're up to figuring out what are the things that we as humans are really, really good at. What are the unique things that are really fantastic about us, and what can the cognitive systems add on to that uniqueness? And I don't know if you saw the great speech by Jack Ma at the Davos Center where he talked about education. But it was fantastic to listen to him, top dog Alibaba guy, self-made man, saying, the future of education lies in the arts, sports. We need to become poets. We can't take on the machines. What they excel at, we need to just drop and do something else. That was amazing to hear, right? So he was onto this. Now, this is a slide that we've used a lot because it sort of calls out a couple of things, but I would like to call attention to one thing that is very significant for our times now, and that is the part about biases. I assume you're all familiar with the concept of biases. It's basically an unacknowledged prejudice that we sort of walk around with. For instance, if I would have showed up here today, dressed very weirdly in a one-piece or something like that, you would probably not have listened to me in the same way as when I'm wearing the jacket. There are a bunch of these biases, right? And there was a very interesting case just recently, earlier this year. If you go to gendershades.org, you will see that what they did was they took data sets, they took images, and they applied these various visual recognition algorithms provided by Microsoft, by IBM, by Face++, and they looked at what are the types of faces that the algorithms are really good at looking at. And it turned out generally across a very broad data set, these visual algorithms are really, really good. They can pick out faces and they can say, that's a human face. However, they were exceedingly well at picking out white males. And they were not so good at picking out women of color. So that's a bias that is inherited from us into these systems. And that is something that we need to address, because when we automate these various capabilities and we stand these up, these types of unacknowledged or unrealized inherited biases become a problem. It becomes a problem in our pursuit of the segment of one. It becomes a problem of our pursuit of democratizing knowledge. So still, I think it is valid to say that we humans are laden with these biases, and the machines do not have to be necessarily, if we just keep an eye on how we provide data sets and how we set up algorithms. So anyway, there's a complementary relationship between humans and machines. And when this is working really well, it can work something like this. You amplify something, you extend something, you make something better, you team up with technology to express yourself more. And then it can look a bit like this, or this, or this. So what Watson is doing now is basically taking a function, taking a role, taking a work task, taking a process, taking an organization, and then just revving it up, trying to do it as best as possible. So it becomes very much an optimization game. So how do you make sure that cancer doctors are really good at keeping up with the latest research? I mean, there are millions and millions of research papers published all the time, and it's very difficult to be au courant with the latest information. But you do want to be that. You do want to have the doctor in front of you being knowledgeable about the cancer you're facing, maybe. And you want the doctor to be able to be human, a good caregiver, rather than an encyclopedia of Latin terms that doesn't mean anything to you, right? So this is the type of things that the Watson are now addressing. Like this, for instance.
Where's Jack?
He's on holiday. What do you need?
I need the temperature for pipe 5.
Ask the new guy.
The new guy?
Jack trained him.
Jack's guidance would be to maintain the temperature at negative 160 degrees Celsius.
That doesn't sound like Jack.
Actually, Jack would say, hey mate, just cool it to minus 160 and we're set. Good on you.
Oh yeah, that's Jack.
So a lot of this is a commercial, but it's actually a real case behind it. But the point I want to get across here is that Watson is doing a lot of expertise management, right? So we're trying to train Watson in specific domains in order to make sure that if you have a guy who's sick or on holiday or someplace else in the business, that expertise that person has is made available to the rest of the workforce. So there are a lot of these use cases where we try to get the expert level as high as possible across the entire workforce. Another way to put it is this.
Who's the new guy?
They call him the Whisperer.
The Whisperer. Why do they call him the Whisperer?
He talks to planes.
He talks to planes.
Watch this. Hey, Watson, what's avionics telling you?
Maintenance records and performance data suggest replacing capacitor C4.
Not bad. What's with the coffee maker?
Sorry, we are not on speaking terms.
So this is a case with Korean Air, where we have trained Watson on their avionics system, which is basically their maintenance system. So that means that Watson, who is very good at pattern recognition, can figure out things that these mechanics can benefit from. However, that little joke at the end about the coffee maker is an important one, because what we are not doing and what we are not pursuing really is this general intelligence that people talk about. So when Kurzweil talk about the oncoming of the Singularity and the general purpose capable AI, that is not something that we are working with at all. I mean, it's a bit too difficult for us. So we need to be very domain specific. So when we train Watson on the avionics system, Watson doesn't know anything. That instance of Watson doesn't know anything about cancer diagnostics. So it doesn't necessarily translate, or at least it doesn't translate very smoothly across various domains. But these are the types of things that Watson is working on. So we're trying to figure out how to find a good way for this partnership to work. How do we make sure that we understand what the business needs are, and if we had the best capable workforce available or the best processes in place, what would they look like, and how would we go about achieving that? So looking just a little bit ahead, I just wanted to toss out to you 5 predictions, because I think this is maybe not grand challenges, but these are damn impressive. And these are the things that Watson is about to work on. And this is sort of where we're going. And I don't know if you are familiar with the IBM Research 5 in 5 predictions, if you've heard about them before. But every now and then, IBM Research will try to call out 5 technologies that will have a radical impact on our lives within 5 years. So we try not to sort of shoot for the moon all the time, but we try to look at, okay, within a manageable horizon, what can we see coming, and what would be the implications for us? And this was just announced earlier this week, actually, in Vegas, where IBM is currently running this big yearly Think event. So here they are. Number 1, crypto anchors and blockchain. I don't know if you've ever heard crypto anchors before, but it's basically a physical instantiation of the transparency and promise of blockchain. So what we're trying to do is bridge the gap between the physical reality and the digital twin, where we are now working with blockchain, right? So think of the possibility of authenticating any type of physical object, big or small, and have that accurately then represented in blockchain. So this is coming, and this is of course also AI powered. Number 2, lattice cryptography. Never heard about it before. But it's a very interesting way of ensuring that when quantum computing takes off, encryption can still be made possible. So this is also AI fueled. Number 3, AI powered robot microscopes. This is real stuff that IBM Research is working on. And it's all about trying to figure out how can we in a viable way monitor the oceans, because the oceans is a very early indicator of what we're doing with the climate. So when the UN put up these sustainable development goals, the challenge is, okay, how do we make sure that we steer towards them? And these AI-powered robotic microscopes can help with that by monitoring the sea oceans. Number 4, this is about the unbiasedness of AI. And I think this was a recent addition to this list, because when that report from Gender Shades was published, it was a big surprise for a lot of people working with AI. We had already understood that there was a challenge, but we hadn't really understood the severity of the problem. So this is now something that we're tackling. And then finally, quantum computing. IBM has a tremendous ambition when it comes to quantum computing. We've already stood up, I forget if it's 5 or 10 cubic computers as services on the IBM cloud, and there are 30 or 50 cubic computers available for commercial use. But anyway, IBM is foreseeing a future not that far away, a couple of years, where quantum computing will be all over the place. So this is a future we're moving into very near at hand, and with that I think I say thank you for me.